insurance in Florida. So what's really going on? The news is telling us there's a lot of challenges. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing. Welcome back to Really Married. Today, I'm really excited to talk about a very big topic that everybody's wanting to know about, and that is insurance in Florida. So what's really going on? I have Vincent Wieland here from John Galt Insurance here in Southwest Florida. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mary. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, there's a lot of challenges or the news is telling us there's a lot of challenges. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing.
For sure. We always see these stories, every single day about what insurance is doing in Florida, right? We always see, these headlines and, everybody's gets a little nervous about, what the market's doing, what it's looking like. But, what I've seen since I've been in the industry is, of course, it's been a roller coaster, right, for the past couple of years. But for right now, it's been pretty, we've seen rates kind of being stagnant right now because we didn't really get that bad of a hurricane season last season. And they're really cutting down the fraud that's been going on, throughout the industry for the last couple of years. So that's where I've really seen, the rates kind of be stagnant for right now with home insurance. And there's a lot of factors that do go into the pricing of it. But for, renewals that are coming up, a lot of the carriers are being more lenient towards those. And I just see a lot of, carriers, not keep, jacking up the rates on people's, insurance.
Yeah, stagnant is an interesting word because usually stagnant is bad, except in insurance when it's good. That means they're flat. They're just not doing anything, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen rates I haven't seen a lot of people, reshopping this year because the rates kind of, didn't increase like we saw in, the past 2 or 3 years.
Right. We had a big storm back in Ian and that kind of shook things up.
For sure.
You were talking a little earlier about fraud, which you just mentioned it. And what's been happening with fraud, I think we saw after maybe Irma, which was a wind event where a lot of roofs were damaged and such. Speak on that.
Yeah. So during Ian, Irma, past probably 5 to 10 years, a lot happened was a lot of fraud, right? A lot of these roofers were going onto these roofs, that were only $10,000, $15,000 worth of damage. And, the insureds did, assign their, benefits over to these roofers and these third-party contractors. And they tell them, hey, file a claim on my behalf. And these roofers would file these claims on their behalf, try to get as much money as possible, which is $40,000, $50,000 off a $10,000 roof claim. And that's what's causing these, carriers to go under and, paying out way more than they should. And that's what's, affecting all of us in Florida, right, is all these, all the fraud that's been going on these past couple of years.
So we've kind of cut down on that. And, if you're looking for a home, a roof is a thing that is truly an asset if it's been, put a new roof on.
100%.
But there's different types. And, we came from the Midwest, so asphalt roofs were the thing.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't have the lives that we have here. So talk a little bit about that. If I'm looking for a house, what age of roof should I think about?
Yeah. So if you're looking, for a house, there's 3 really main types of roofs. So it's like asphalt, shingle, metal, and tile. If you're looking, at an asphalt shingle roof, I'd say about 5 to 10 years, is a good, starting point of where you want to look when you're looking for a new home purchase. Tile roof, that can, last up to 25, 30 years. And then metals, last the longest. Those last, 30, even 40 years. But, every roof, with, who I work with, all the carriers I work with, everything can be insurable, in Florida. There's always an option out there. But for, buyers, right now in this market, I would definitely lean towards, a roof that's a little bit, on the newer side, just so, it just lasts longer because, in Florida, there's a lot of wear and tear and, we get all these storms and stuff. So these roofs don't last as long as they do in the Midwest.
Absolutely. Now, one of the interesting things is on last investment property I bought, roof was at end of life. So getting insurance was kind of an iffy thing, but having them replace it before we closed was not an option. That was a point when I could get gap insurance for the month or so from when I took possession to when, our full-fledged insurance went in. Is there such a thing anymore?
So what we can do, so say someone's roof is, less than 5 years remaining useful life, and it's, at the end of its road, there's carriers out there that don't require inspections. And, if you guys need to get to closing, I can write, the client with a carrier, whoever, if you're buying a house, write you guys with a carrier. Once you guys get through closing and you go get a contract on your new roof, get it, permits it and everything, that's when I can reshop you and save you as much money as possible when you guys, do eventually put on that new roof. So
Love that. Yeah. I love that because you could negotiate better on the home if it's got an older roof. The current owner doesn't want to deal with the roof. And it's really not that complicated to put a new roof on, quite honestly. It's, much cheaper now than it was a few years ago, believe it or not. The other thing that's big right now, clearly, is flood insurance. So talk to us about flood.
So for flood, probably in the past couple of years, they've had this new rating system where they come out with, that kind of just remapped the entire state of Florida about, changing different flood zones, people going from low risk to high risk. They've kind of changed that. And, what I've seen is the rates have gone up, with flood insurance ever since Ian, especially on this coast. I've seen, that have a big effect on it. And the biggest thing I'd tell clients is if you're buying a new purchase and your house is in a flood zone, please, please, please ask the sellers if they have a FEMA or NFIP, flood insurance policy. If they have a flood insurance policy, please ask for it, and you can get that rate grandfathered and then transferred in to your new policy, and that rate can exactly stay the same. I've saved clients thousands of dollars by doing this.
Well, that brings up a good point. Now, FEMA, NFIP, which is the National
Flood Insurance Program,
they don't really cover very much. So if you're buying a luxury home and it only covers $200,000 of damage to the house, and then what, $100,000 on furniture?
Yeah. So for these FEMA and NFIP policies, the max dwelling that you can have is $250,000, and then the max content coverage you get have is $100,000.
And it could be kind of expensive. Like, on I had a quote a while ago on I think the house was maybe $2 or $3 million. It was $20,000 for $20,000 a year. Now, if you're getting a loan, we got to have insurance. There's not a way around it. But there are other programs out there that aren't national programs, right?
Yeah. So I work with a couple private market options that, can go exceed those 250,000 limits. And, if you want to cover more of your property, you don't have a loan, you're in a high risk zone and you want to be covered. There is options to go up to, $1 million, $2 million in coverage, and also contents as well exceed that 100,000 with the private flood market options.
Because even with the inside, if the lower cabinets are damaged, they're not going to replace the upper cabinets in FEMA. It's just going to be the lower one. So can you match it? What can you do? So, shop it around. I think the nice thing, Vincent, about you is you can shop things around. You have 50 carriers that you work with, right?
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely shop. And if you think your coverages are low, if they're too high, maybe you're overinsured, because people can be overinsured. They're paying too much for their property, right? So if you think you're overinsured, underinsured, I can, reshop you and kind of see, where you're best at for your property.
I love that. Now, something that also is kind of interesting to me is a wind mitigation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
yeah,
talk about the ages and the benefits of that wind mitigation.
Yeah, I'd say, with the homes that are over 20 years old, I would recommend every single person to get a wind mitigation, right? So what the wind mitigation does, it takes a look, how the roof's kind of attached to the home, what nails they used, what the roof's, made out of. The biggest thing is how it's attached. And also if you have hurricane protection, you have shutters, or you have impact rated glass, those credits can really discount your premium. I mean, it takes off hundreds, even thousands of dollars, right? That I've seen, I've run worst case, best case scenarios for some clients, and, their quotes are coming in thousands of dollars difference. So I'd recommend that to anybody that, has a home that they're buying that's over, or even if you have a home and you're looking to reshop, that's over, 2005 or older, get that wind mitigation. We can see how much money we could save for you. Yeah.
My home's built in the late 90s. And recently I put in impact windows, which, by the way, some homes, we're recording this on Marco Island today. Some homes never had wind protection on their windows. They didn't have storm protection. So, coming in from the outside, that's a little scary. Oh my gosh, this home doesn't have that. But they've gone through some major storms in that period of time. So if we were going to put on, some storm protection, I like impact windows.
Yeah.
Peace of mind. I don't have to do anything with them. I don't have to put them up, down, worry about somebody messing up my electronic shutters, which are the easiest. But whatever they are, the nice thing is that you have options, and it can really reduce the cost of your insurance.
Yeah, for sure. When people, tell me, oh, I'm getting impact rated windows, after we close or in a couple months, I tell them, hey, once you get that done, get a wind mitigation, right?
Yeah.
And I could, reshop it, take a look for it. I also have a service team an agent advocate team behind me that can look at your policies once they've, renewed and everything. They can take a look at that and adjust your coverages, apply those credits too. So when your renewal comes up or in a couple months after we close, they'll be able to adjust everything for you to, be most cost efficient.
I love that. I love that you guys are proactive in that way. Again, John Galt Insurance is really excellent because unfortunately in some of the storms we've had, phones went out. They couldn't figure out how to do it. John Galt's always been there that, when in doubt, call John Galt, right? If you've got a problem. Another thing that's near and dear to my heart is electrical panels. Because if you're buying an older home, it may have aluminum wiring. And I have to have insurance because I can't not. So what does that look like?
Electrical panels, right now there's some, talk going around about those with inspectors too that I've seen. But in the general, sense of, if there's double taps, if on a 4-point, if your home's over 20 years old, you have that 4-point. If it says satisfactory, I can insure every single electrical panel that there is. If they do have aluminum wiring, there is options out there for it, right? If it just says unsatisfactory, then, we'd have to get this fixed before closing. But if everything says satisfactory, age, even, the type of electrical panel, if it's a Challenger panel, Siemens, anything like that, then it can still be insured.
So that's just good to know. So I'm buying a home. I'm going to get those inspections. People are like, oh, I don't need an inspection. Well, in Florida, you should.
Yep.
One of the biggest things you should get is a wind mitigation because when you buy that home, that's going to help my insurance.
100%,
right?
Yep.
Very much so. And then that's where they check the electrical panel, the roof, the storm shutters, et cetera.
Yep.
There's 4 points.
Yeah. 4 point.
There's 4, hence 4 point.
4 point. All right.
That's right. Those are, those older homes, those 60s, 70s, quaint little cute bungalow homes. Some of them still have, aluminum wiring in them.
They do.
Or one strand of it. Again, in that little rental place I bought, had one strand. So we just went ahead and rewired it. It wasn't the whole panel.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. I think that, a lot of things that you guys have talked about, are going to be very home specific. Polybutylene, that's kind of a big thing in between the mid 80s, maybe, and early 90s.
Homes. Yeah, those older homes as well.
He says older, but that's only because it's not that old. But it is older than 2005.
Yeah.
So some of those is a time, but your inspector can catch that. They can know what kind of plumbing it is. And there's ways to remediate that as well.
100%. Yeah. So even if there is, say you're trying to look for a home, it's your dream home, you have polybutylene piping, there is options out there. And if, we could get you a policy for your closing, right? It might exclude water in the meantime, but once you get that replaced and, the plumbing would be 34 years old by the time, if you want to get that replaced, then we can reshop you again and we can save you, money and, we can get you with a better carrier as well.
I'm hearing this over and over again, reshop. That is the most important thing. So even if you're sitting out there and you own a home, Southwest Florida, give Vincent a call because, it's time. We all, every year, whatever time of year it's time to look at your things, maybe when the policy renews, maybe in a different time, you're happy to give them a quote for something that would fit their personal lifestyle and the home they're in. 100%.
I have people reach out to me even if I've written their policy in the past, reach out to me because there's always, carriers that are opening up more capacity.
Right.
There's carriers that are actually, new carriers that we get appointed with that I can, didn't have a year ago or didn't have a couple months ago. And I can reshop it for you and see, how much money I could save for you. And I'd, break down everything and compare your coverages and guide you through the process.
I love that. You know what? You're going to have to call this guy. You're going to love him as much as I do. I'm pretty confident and probably save a lot of money. So until next time, I'm Mary Bartos with the Bartos Group of Premier Plus Realty and
Vincent Wieland with John Galt Insurance. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you here in paradise. Own in your peace.